We've been proactive to make sure that we have the right people voting, electing the right leaders to lead this country.
Then Noem responded to criticism yesterday on the site formerly known as Twitter, saying this: yes, we must build election infrastructure that makes it easy and secure for eligible American citizens to vote while preventing non-citizens, including what she calls illegal aliens, from casting ballots. The choice of who to vote for is obviously up to the voters themselves. Clean up on aisle 9, Angelo. Here's the thing. Who are the right people? These are the questions. Who are the right people? For whom do we want them voting for? And furthermore, where is the evidence of the widespread voter fraud? Even the Heritage Foundation has not determined there is widespread voter fraud. Their own data and research says there's not. So is this a case of if they just say it enough, people start to believe it?
Yeah, so I think that's part of it, in terms of their execution. But there's something to also consider is that where's the evidence where you can actually find them? There are people. Now, that's not evidence, but the source of it is there's this constellation of right-wing influencers that have been pickled in these lies now for 6 years. And they're not just out there, talking about it. They're working directly with the Trump administration to say, now it's time, now that you're in power, go back and find proof of the things and the conspiracies that we were pushing 5 or 6 years ago. So if you look at what happened in Fulton County, just a week before the raid in Fulton County, Patrick Byrne, who was in the Oval Office in 2020 with Sidney Powell and Michael Flynn saying when Trump said to seize the voting machines, he had to leave a TV hit before it happened to do an emergency meeting at the White House, which apparently was about some upcoming thing related to election conspiracy. So to me, where's the source? It's all of these influencers out there that they are now basically running the playbook around whatever false claim they have been holding on to for 6 or 7 years. And they're everywhere. There's a bunch of people percolating in Maricopa County now in Arizona. And so that's the thing that's sort of giving it some fuel. Obviously, Trump's own narrative and all the externalities for it. But you can really zero in, and that's what you'll find.
It's just amazing to me. I mean, imagine you are an undocumented person in this country. You are right now afraid to go to work, afraid to go to the grocery store, and they think you're showing up on election day.
Okay, clock it.
I mean, it doesn't even make sense. And then to layer onto that, you have the president posting this on X on Friday. I have searched the depths of legal arguments not yet articulated or vetted on this subject and will be presenting an irrefutable one in the very near future. There will be voter ID for the midterm elections, whether approved by Congress or not. So sort of like a passing glance. I'm sorry, that was on Truth, not on X. You get the idea. It's a passing glance to the Save America Act, right? The fact that right now there is action in Congress to have mandatory IDs for when people register to vote, for when people go to vote. He can't do what he's saying he will do by presidential fiat. But I think part of the play here is to just continue to make people uncertain about American elections. And I think he is banking on the idea that simply sowing those seeds of doubt ultimately will benefit him.
I believe so. I think they're trying to cast doubt for the 2026 midterm elections because they know the results are not going to be in their favor. Historically, midterm elections are never good for the sitting president. But I think that if I am reading the tea leaves, it's going to be a massive blue wave. I think that people are upset that Trump has not gotten through or not followed through on any of his campaign promises, whether it be to bring down prices. They're looking at things like the ICE murdering American citizens in the streets. And they're like, this is not what I signed up for. ICE has gone too far. And so he's already trying to cast out. We saw him do it in 2020 in the lead up to the election with Joe Biden and him going after mail-in voting and all of these things. And I think, too, now they've seemed to tailor the message to include illegal immigrants. And they're saying that illegals are voting. And, of course, we all want citizens to be the only ones voting in our elections. But that is what is happening. Right. They're acting like this is some widespread issue. In Utah, they did an audit of their registered voters of over 2 million voters, and they found one illegal immigrant registered, and the person had never even voted. So this is not some widespread issue like they're trying to make it out to be, but they're trying to use that to justify their what I would call voter suppression. And that's where you have Kristi Noem saying that we only want the right people showing up and voting for the right leaders. And it just feeds into into this pattern of everything that they're already doing to try to control the upcoming election, whether it be Trump calling for nationalizing elections, seizing the ballots in Georgia, wanting to end mail-in voting. And I think that it follows a pattern that they are definitely looking at future elections, whether it's 2026 or 2028, and trying to manipulate the outcome.
They are trying to get voters to believe two things that are in direct conflict, which is that Democrats are inept at government. They don't know what they're doing. But at the same time, these same Democrats have spent years behind the scenes getting all these undocumented people to vote illegally, getting dead people to vote illegally, and that they've been able to do that while being inept at government. And that is at the root of conspiracies, right? And a lot of that lives online. The other thing that I think is really interesting about this, Angelo, is the timing of all of this. When you watch Kristi Noem get all of a sudden start talking about voting, why? Because she's under siege, right? Donald Trump has issues with her. I know that. I've heard from people on the inside, and so have a lot of other reporters. But Tulsi Gabbard herself, and this is from New York Times from February 9th, her 2020 election claims put her back in favor with Trump. With the renewed investigation into baseless claims about fraud during the 2020 election, she is back in the spotlight in Mr. Trump's good graces. Ms. Gabbard's superpower, at least in the eyes of Mr. Trump, is her enthusiasm for what many consider conspiracy theories and her relentless focus on attacking and rooting out the so-called deep state. A lot of the things that we're seeing these members of his cabinet do have nothing to do with what they're actually saying they want done. It is to make him happy.
Yeah, and it's more than just to make him happy, too. It's actually to help him achieve a larger externality. And what you just described is a pattern that we've seen play out over and over again with right-wing media that has now become government policy. And that pattern is this. Trump makes a ridiculous claim. Maybe he plucked it from one of the Truth Social posts. Maybe it just came up with his own imagination. But he makes this argument. And then someone in right-wing media, a prominent influencer, it used to be Sean Hannity back in the day. Now it's a Steve Bannon or Benny Johnson, somebody who's trying to make a name for themselves. They then trip over themselves to backfill it, to make that thing substantiate, whatever it is, regardless of how absurd that argument is. And that is how they curry favor. And that pattern, and of course then Trump awards them, right? He gives them more credit or acknowledge it, maybe more access, maybe a little wink. Here it's the same thing in practice in the administration. He sows his distrust, his anger, his sense of negative sentiment with an administration official, and then they then scurry to try to do something to backfill a claim that he's been making, except instead of it just being with words, they now use government power to then try to find or manipulate or engineer concrete evidence of it, even if it's not there, so that he can either reinforce or sustain or fuel a larger narrative and then, as has been discussed here, take some larger external action. At the end of the day, he's already said what he wants to do. He doesn't want people voting. He wants to make it hard for them to vote. He wants to cheat and steal. And he thinks the ends justify the means here, and he's going to do it. One way or another, at least he's going to try to. And all of these things are the pieces to help him execute that.
I'm just reminded of Mark Elias, who has sat at this table many a times and has said that the president they were successful in Fulton County. They got a judge to sign a warrant to seize ballots. And so if they will do that for an election that happened in 2020, in the year of our Lord 2026, what do we think they are going to be able to do this November?